Blog Talk Radio.
Are you ready to take a bite out of the competition? Are you looking for ideas to make your business better? Welcome to the Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet, sponsored by Apple Capital Group. At the core of every successful business, you'll find people making a difference. And with each episode of the Core Business Show, we talk with those people, examine those ideas, and explore the strategies that make them special. Now, the host of the Core Business Show, Tim Jacquet.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of the Core Business Show. I'm Tim Jacquet, your host. Today I have the pleasure of having Al Daverson. He's the founder of Strategic Sales and Marketing. We're going to talk about today 5 reasons why lead generation programs fail. If you would like to join in the conversation, please dial 347-324-3460, or you can post your question in the chat room, or email us at info@Apple Capital Group or info, the Core Business Show. Al, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Nice to be here with you.
I guess to begin with, our listeners love personal stories on CEOs for the company and how they founded that company. Can you take us back for a second and just give us a personal story about you and to bring us how did you end up starting your own business?
Sure. I come out of the world of selling. One of the things about a lot of lead generation ownership companies, folks who own their own lead generation companies, a lot of those folks come out of the calling center industry. I come out of sales, and I was a sales rep, then a sales manager, and then finally an owner of a lead generation company. So actually, I used to sit on the other side of the desk, and I used to be a user of sales leads. And today, I'm a generator of sales leads. So it's from that experience of actually being a user of sales leads that I think helps me pretty much every day understand what a good lead is and understand what makes lead generation programs work more effectively. Being a user of sales leads, I think, was the number one inspiration for me to start my own lead generation company. I know how important leads are and how effective a good lead generation program can be to a sales team. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a footprint for how I got into business.
Wow, an amazing story. So as a sales manager, of course, you've been on the front lines with the sales counselors and account execs to the desk and being a sales manager. Any common problems that you have seen as being a manager and as an account rep? There's always a certain issue when it comes to lead generation.
I think there's a group of issues that we see a lot of times in some, what I would call some real basic kind of fundamentals that need to be looked at when a lead generation program is developed and designed. I think you've really got to make sure that if it's you that's doing the lead generation, or if you're outsourcing that function to a lead generation company, regardless, you've got to have good procedures. There's got to be good practices, good professionalism, good style, good attitude, good tone. Those are just some of the basic things that we need. I would say one of the basic kind of fundamental ingredients to making a lead generation program successful. And if you don't have that, then, first of all, you're going to have a people problem, and that your program is going to be crashing a lot because you're sounding robotic, you're sounding staged, you may sound overly enthusiastic, you may sound dull, you may sound sleepy. And really, none of that is what we're looking for. We're really looking for much more of a natural sound, much more organic sound that comes off like a real one-on-one conversation and one-on-one communication. So I would say that's one of the big ingredients and one of the biggest kind of pitfalls of a lead generation program and why a lot of programs fail.
Okay. We have 3 questions here. One is regarding, is there such thing as a bad lead?
I think there are leads that are not qualified. I think that there are incomplete qualification conversations. I think that there are leads that get passed down through the sales team, where I would say that there are leads that are quote unquote not ready for the sales team, and that a lot of times sales opportunities are quickly qualified. They're not more thoroughly qualified. And so I think if you ask sales reps in general if there's such thing as a bad lead, you'd get an overwhelming yes to that question. Okay. But I think that one of the things leads that are really not going to travel through your sales cycle is that one of the things about a lead generation program that I think everyone needs to understand is that you've got to have in every good lead generation program, there's got to be not interested prospects. It's part of the qualification process. And a lot of times that issue is how wide you've got your prospecting funnel open. And that's where it becomes difficult because you've got to have your funnel open wide enough to let prospects flow through your funnel, but it's got to be narrow enough to make sure that leads are going to be qualified so that you have reliability, predictability, and consistency in lead quality. And that's what's really challenging is knowing, how wide or how narrow your prospecting funnel should be. That's typically something that you learn over time and through trial and error.
Wow, should. And taking that, of course, maybe that bad lead could become something fruitful in the future. For example, some people will do like a white paper and maybe the person is not interested at that particular moment or just want to read the contents of that. Is there some way, I guess, you can massage that and say, okay, thank you for the white paper, and we're always here to help to keep those lines of communication open so they able to come back to you or you can reach back out to them in a friendly way in the future?
I think a lot of times you'll have, let's say your target is VP of operations. And so you're talking to that decision maker. You take that prospect through qualification and that prospect doesn't necessarily qualify out very well. That not interested response doesn't necessarily mean that company really doesn't have an opportunity for you. So what we recommend is that you dial back in and go to a different level of contact. Go to the CFO level and run your pitch against a different level of contact. So even if you've developed the lead with the VP of operations and that lead ends up going nowhere, so you're doing your follow-up and that lead doesn't end up advancing, you shouldn't assume that the information that you've gotten from that call or the reaction that you've gotten from that VP of operations is necessarily the gospel for that particular company. And you're going to want to call the VP, another VP at the company or a CFO level person or a comptroller, run your script again. And it's very common to see a completely different reception if you just change your level of contact.
Okay. Here's the other question real quick regarding bulk email lists, which in the past they were an asset. In today's society, where we are today, are those firms are still effective or not by renting their list or buying their list from them?
I'll tell you, I think the effectiveness of email, and especially bulk email or cold emailing, is still very questionable in terms of an effective media or medium. And the reason for that is that there are so many things in the marketplace that are protecting end users from unsolicited email that here we are trying to use that medium where there's a whole industry built on keeping emails from getting to those folks. And here we are as marketers using that same medium to try to penetrate and get the decision makers through unsolicited or cold email. So I think that when you really boil a lot of this down, you're looking at a lot of undeliverable mail. You may have an email list of 20,000, but at the end of the day, the reality might be that it's only a few thousand people that you actually get your email to. And then of that universe, only a small group are actually opening it and reading it. I think there's a lot of big question marks on the effectiveness of using bulk email that still are going unanswered.
Okay. Let's take a break for a second, and then we'll dive into the 5 reasons why lead generation programs fail. Be back in one moment.
You're listening to the Core Business Show, sponsored by Apple Capital Group. Apple Capital Group in Jacksonville, Florida, is a commercial lender that specializes in asset-based loans, equipment leasing and financing, invoice financing, commercial real estate loans, and asset-based financing in the U.S. and Canada. Apple Capital Group is a direct lender that lends on their private equity investment portfolio. 90% of most loans are decided within 2 hours, and vendor funding within 24 hours after documents are completed, with a one-page application. No slow no's, just a quick decision and a fast yes. To get more information about lending from Apple Capital Group, call 866-611-7457. That's 866-611-7457 to speak with one of our loan specialists. Or visit us right now at applecapitalgroup.com. Welcome back to the core. Once again, here's Tim Jacquet.
Again, we're with Al Davidson, and we're going to talk about the 5 reasons why lead generations program fail. So I guess just go ahead and talk about each one.
Sure. The first one I alluded to earlier, which is really all about the sound of your lead generation efforts. And when we talk about sound, we're talking about style, attitude, tone. In other words, what does your marketing effort actually sound like on the phone? And I often recommend that you get a second opinion. So you may have your own opinion about how your program sounds, but it's also good to seek out a second opinion and ask colleagues what they think about in terms of the professional sound of your lead generation effort. Really talking about lead generators, and we want to make sure that lead generators don't sound robotic, they don't sound staged. We don't want them to sound overly enthusiastic. We don't want them to sound dull or sleepy. We really want them to have a natural sound and, again, an organic feel to the communication. So, very important. If you don't have those things, then you're really driving the car without wheels. And it's going to be absolutely necessary that you make sure you cover that base. The second item is your contact list. And this is a big factor. There's a saying in the business that you'll be no better than the list. And so it's very important. You want to make sure that you're not trying to sell ice cubes to Eskimos and that your message is not hitting the wrong crowd. Contact lists, the development of those lists can be complex, but you're really going to want to do some testing. You're going to make sure that those companies are not too big or too small. You're going to want to right size those companies. You're going to make sure that their standard industry codes are on target. And then you're going to continue to kind of retweak that list. And if you're not performing well against that list, then it may be time to look at even running a new list and establishing some new criteria. The next item is really the program script. And there's a lot of talk in the industry about whether a script should be used or shouldn't be used. Whether you actually use your script while you're on the phone with a prospect or not is really a decision that you can make based upon your own comfort zone. But I still think that it's really important that a script be prepared and that the planning process that goes in behind a script is something that you make sure you do. So you're always going to want to make sure that your content and your qualification questions are all logical. You're going to want to make sure that things are short, but yet very concise. And I think that a lot of times without that kind of planning, there's a lot of winging that goes on and too loose of process. And therefore, many times conversations that happen don't produce qualified leads because you didn't have good planning behind you. The next item is really, I think one of the biggest problems that we see lead generation programs, why lead generation programs fail is that there's very little contact rate with the key decision maker. And a lot of times this is done because you don't have the name of your decision maker before you pick up the phone. And nowadays, there's really no excuse for that because there's a lot of good data that's available in the marketplace where you can prepare yourself with contact names before you pick up the phone and make a call. So you're going to want to make sure that you have that vital piece of information. You're going to want to make sure you have a name of that decision maker so that when you call in, you're looking to reach out to that person with a name, and that helps you navigate through gatekeepers and screeners. It's also very important that you try to do networking and referral development when you dial in to a company. And that means that, for example, if you're trying to reach out to, let's say, a VP of sales or a VP of marketing, that you actually network with lower level decision makers, people at the managerial or director level. And if you network with those people, many times you can get a referral up to the higher level. And that will help you navigate through gatekeepers and screeners because you can call in and use those other decision makers' names as a way to gate through heavy screens that might be in place to try to keep you from reaching out to those decision makers. Another big item, and this is last, would be trying to prevent what we call early termination of your phone calls or shutdown. Shutdown happens typically at the very beginning of a script, and it's probably the most common reason why lead generation programs crash. And so when you open up the conversation, it's very important. And this is where, your sound is very important. Decision makers are going to pick up immediately on the fact that you sound staged or forced, or it sounds like you're reading a script. So it's going to be very important that you take time to learn the script and reciting it until it sounds natural and flows easy. That's going to help a lot because in this shutdown window, this first, let's say 12 seconds of a phone call, the decision maker is really making up their minds whether or not they're going to stay on the line with you. So you really got to think about your introduction, think about it as a headline to a news article, and really make sure that you've got something that's going to have a hook in that opening line that's going to engage your audience and make sure that you don't lose them early. Now, if you are getting early termination or shutdown in the beginning of the script, then you're going to know that your opening is not effective and you need to continue to tweak your opening and massage that language, keep it short, shorten it, and experiment until you start to see your shutdown rate minimized. And it's good to keep track statistically of how much shutdown you're getting so that you can benchmark your progress as you go along. So those are 5 component parts of the top 5 reasons why lead generation programs many times skid off the road and some ideas on how to fix them.
Okay. Last couple of questions real quick regarding
Sure.
any books that people can read on to enhance their skills that comes to mind.
Sure.
Some CRMs have scripts, some you have to actually create. Any books you can recommend that for a sales department can create their own scripts?
Some of my favorite books, one is Spin Selling by Neil Rackham, and also I like Solution Selling is a very good one. And also a newer book that came out about a year ago is Snap Selling, which I really enjoyed a great deal. So those 3 are good, very good reads.
Okay. And what about any particular that's easy to use for a company that really don't need all the bells and whistles, but just need to be able to follow and be able to get incoming leads and so forth?
2 of them that come to mind that I know our clients are using. One is called Pipeline Deals, which is pretty inexpensive, but yet powerful and functional CRM. That's a web-based program. Doesn't have the depth that Salesforce.com has, but a lot of smaller organizations or medium-sized organizations don't need all of that. Pipeline Deals is a very good one. And then another one that I've heard some good reviews on is a CRM called Highrise. And both of those it's pipelinedeals.com and highrise.com.
Okay. Other than that, anything you would like to tell us about your company, where we can look at your information, and if they want to contact you and ask more questions?
Sure. Just a quick little elevator pitch on us. We are a business lead generation company. We've been around since 1989. We're very niched into what's called major account lead generation, and that's typically working with companies who focus on selling complex B2B products and services. So we typically do not work in the commodity type items, things like computer hardware, telecom equipment, office supplies. Most of our clients have as a target typically a high-level decision maker and typically they are asking their clients, their prospects, to spend large sums of money. So when we generate a lead and we hand it to a client, those leads are typically worth a considerable amount of money to our clients, usually tens of dollars versus hundreds. And finally, when we do lead generation, we're typically using a solution sell process. And therefore, when we build leads, we're typically always looking for prospects that are having a challenge, a problem, or an issue that needs to be resolved. And that's typically how we build our lead generation program. You can visit our website at www.manageyourleads.com.
Al, thank you. I really appreciate you coming on the program. And what's that web address again?
Web address is www.manageyourleads.com.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Okay, take care. Again, that was Al Davison. He is with Strategic Sales and Marketing. You can reach out to him, and his phone number is on his website. Everybody, thank you for listening to the Core Business Show. Thank you for listening. You can download this episode on iTunes on Blog Talk Radio. Take care. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet. For a free quote on equipment leasing and financing, visit our website, applecapitalgroup.com. That's applecapitalgroup.com. And fill out the information to receive your free quote. We hope you'll join us for our next episode. And remember, you can always get to the Core via iTunes. You'll find all our previous episodes there. Thanks again for listening to the Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet.